Being of European blood and living in Australia, how we celebrate, or how I celebrate certain times of the year and our European traditions and festivities is not quite synchronized with those in the Northern Hemisphere. Many so-called pagans here make the very elementary mistake of doing things like celebrating Yule when everyone else is doing Christmas here, which is in December, which of course is the middle of summer in Australia, which is completely retarded to do winter traditions in the middle of summer. And many Europeans and Northern Hemisphere folk think it's odd that we would be doing Yule in summer, or Samhain or Halloween in spring, and Easter in autumn, and that's because it is. But the intelligent pagans, or heathens, or whatever you want to call us, the intelligent Europeans, understand that our traditions and festivities do not follow the Gregorian calendar. They have existed long before the Gregorian calendar. And all of our traditions and festivities are astrological or astronomical. So what dictates what time it is the weather and the stars and the planets. So for us here, we've just had Easter. Okay, Northern Hemisphere Easter is in what would be considered April, or what it is in April rather. So people who do Easter here, doing it in April makes absolutely no sense. Why are we celebrating life and fertility when everything's beginning to die and go dormant? And of course this has got to do a lot with being separated from our roots and not knowing anything about where we come from and why we do the things we do, which makes things like Easter and Christmas very, very annoying time of the year, because not only are people using the wrong words, I'm fine with the word Easter, but it's completely wrong time of the year, and doing Yule or winter solstice traditions and calling it Christmas, it's just so retarded on so many levels, because it is the wrong word and the wrong time. So it can be very, very frustrating. So even being down here on the other side of the planet, everything is offset by 6 months, but the cycle is still the same. There is some variations and the climate is a little bit different, but the things I've learned or can apply to my life here, having known traditions from another land, the European homeland, it's still applicable. A clear, distinct difference from where I am is that we don't have snow. We don't have snowy white winters. We have harsh winters, but they're harsh for different reasons. It doesn't get particularly cold here. Down south further it does, but here we don't have to worry about the harshness of winter because it's cold. We have to worry about the harshness of winter because it is dry. It doesn't rain here for 3 months. We had our first rain just a couple of days ago for the first time in 3 months. And that's pretty typical though. It's not that uncommon. People here freak out every year saying, oh, there's a drought, when's it gonna rain, when's it gonna rain? And well, 9 weeks ago, when people were telling, I hope we get some rain soon, I said, we're not going to get rain for 9 weeks. We're not going to get rain for 9 weeks, and I'm going to have an estimate and a little bit of a stab and say it's not going to happen until the new moon, 9 weeks from now. And sure enough, the first rain we had in 3 months was on the new moon 9 weeks later. And I had a pretty educated guess as to when roughly it would rain, and we could just call the other to the day a coincidence. But it never rains between the winter solstice and Easter here. Easter, or the spring equinox, is when the first rains might start. And based on some yearly cycles, I came up with the conclusion that we were going to get a little bit of rain early, and we're going to get a little bit more dry again in the spring. We're going to have a dry spring, but then we're going to have a very wet summer. Probably going to have a lot of flooding here. Now, that's where we differentiate then from, say, Europe or North America. We have the dry winter, but it's otherwise fairly mild. But then coming into spring, we get a little bit of rain, greens everything up. We have a nice spring. Spring is probably pretty similar, but instead of having all the snow melt coming and watering and everything, we have a little bit of a wet season with a change of seasons. But then we go through a dry period, which can get quite harsh again until we get our wet season. See, the major difference here between anywhere else on the planet, for that matter, from what I'm aware, I don't know much about Africa or South America, but we get like 2 summers. We get 2 short summers, a dry summer and a wet summer. So by the time the wet summer comes, we get a lot of rain, heavy rain, which gives us good soak, which soaks in until, well, and it lasts well and truly into the winter. If you are not a complete rapist of the land, people who mow their property and don't have enough biomass on their land in order to retain moisture, end up with an even more desert-like land in the winter. And these are the ones that complain about drought and worry about not surviving through the winter. When, if you allow the natural flourishing of foliage and grass and shrubs and everything in that wet time of the winter, of course you have to do some management, fire control and stuff when it becomes the dry season. But if you allow things to flourish and mulch properly, it makes winter a lot more tolerable. And it's this kind of planning and understanding of yearly cycle that I have learned from my European genetics and traditions. Sure, there's been some little differences. Like I said, we don't get snow, but other than that, it's pretty much the same as far as the cycles of the year, the order of things, the foresight, the planning, the way we eat throughout the year. It's like the idea of having a Christmas ham in December or a Yule ham in December, in the middle of spring, absolutely retarded. Worst time to kill a pig. All these things we would do in winter. The time we hunt deer here is coming into winter. So the time here, which correlates with what would be the Easter holiday, which is not truly Easter, it's actually just before Samhain, the beginning of the wild hunt, is when we go and hunt the deer. And that makes sense and it works out that way. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that because I was talking to some people in the north and just explaining some things, but I thought I'd go into a little bit more detail about that. And there's a lot of this psyop going on right now about climate change and everything like that. Well, climate's always changing, obviously, and sure, we can certainly stop polluting more than we are, live simpler lives, live greener lives, and anyone who argues that really is an idiot. But stopping from eating meat and paying more taxes is certainly not the way to go about it, and if that's what your plan is, you're a retarded NPC. Veganism is the worst thing for the environment. It's also the worst thing for the human body. It's just a bad idea. But as far as living greener, simpler lives, really the answer is live slower. Everything needs to slow down. We really need less people, but I don't need to explain that, and I'm not going to go into that detail. But the thing is with the calendars and the maps, or rather the calendars and the times of the years, the seasons. The Earth does not follow the Gregorian calendar. When people say, oh, it's whatever month, the season should be doing this. No, it doesn't. No, it isn't. The seasons aren't out of the whack. The seasons are doing what they'll always do, and they're changing as they're always going to change. So I don't mark spring when it turns to September or whatever. Like people go, oh, it's spring, it should be warmer. When it's warmer, then it's spring. When the ducks start laying eggs, that's when it's Easter. When the rabbits come out, that's when it's Easter. And sure enough, when the stars are aligned and the spring equinox came about, guess what? I had nests full of duck eggs, sprouts, new shoots started coming on the trees, and the spring rain came. Now, to me, everything is working pretty much in time. I managed to determine when it was going to rain based on such markers in the season without really paying too much attention or any attention to the Gregorian calendar. The only thing I have to do with the Gregorian calendar is things business related and money related, because that's what everyone works on, and if you're going to do business you have to cooperate somewhat. But anyway, that's what I have to say about calendars and climate, and yeah, just share a little bit of Europe abroad, how European culture still applies elsewhere on the planet. Thanks for listening.